You will need 4 divisions. Eisenhower himself had ordered Patton to stop, but by the time that order reached the front, Trier had already fallen, Germany's oldest city captured. The impossible done. And now, Patton was mocking the very command that had tried to restrain him. That telegram didn't just shock Paris, it embarrassed it. But to understand why that single sentence carried such weight, you have to understand what stood in Patton's way. Because taking Trier wasn't just difficult, according to military doctrine. It was impossible, cracking the Siegfried line. In February 1945, Patton's Third Army stood face to face with Hitler's final western shield, the Siegfried Line. The Germans called it the West Wall. The Allies called it a nightmare. This wasn't a single trench. It was a zone of death, miles deep, concrete bunkers buried into hillsides, hidden artillery, minefields. Rows of jagged concrete pyramids known as dragon's teeth, designed to tear tanks apart and stop armored advances cold. And nature made it worse. Winter had turned the ground into frozen mud. Tanks sank to their axles. Supply trucks stalled. Infantry suffered from trench foot and exhaustion. Most generals looked at the Siegfried Line and hesitated. They wanted air superiority. They wanted massive artillery barrages. They wanted time. Patton didn't believe in waiting. He understood something others ignored. A defensive line is only as strong as the men holding it. And the German army was cracking. Years of war had drained them. Fuel was scarce. Replacements were inexperienced. Morale was collapsing. Patton sensed weakness. And when Patton smelled weakness, he attacked. Patton summoned one of his most aggressive commanders, General Walton Walker. Walker was short, angry, relentless. Patton called him his bulldog. Patton spread a map across the table and pointed to a narrow triangle between 2 rivers, the Saar and the Moselle. At the tip of that triangle sat Trier, a city over 2,000 years old, founded by the Romans, a symbol of German history, and more importantly, a vital road junction controlling supply routes to the Rhine. "Punch a hole in the line," Patton told Walker. "Then go straight for Trier." Walker studied the terrain, steep hills, dense forests, concrete pillboxes covering every approach. It was a defender's dream. Walker didn't ask if it could be done. He asked when. To break the Siegfried Line, Patton unleashed his best unit, the 10th Armored Division, known as the Tiger Division. On February 19th, the attack began. It wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. American tanks roared forward, slamming into Dragon's Teeth. Combat engineers ran under machine gun fire, planting explosives. German artillery hammered the hillsides. Alongside the armor, the 94th Infantry Division fought bunker by bunker. Grenades through firing slits. Flamethrowers flushing defenders from concrete tombs. For 3 days, it looked like the line would hold. The mud seemed to win, and back in Paris, doubt was growing. For 3 long days, the Third Army fought the Siegfried Line inch by inch. From Paris, it looked slow. From the front, it was hell. Mud swallowed tanks whole. Roads disappeared under freezing rain. Engines overheated. Men slipped, crawled, and bled forward. At Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower's staff watched the map with growing concern. The pins representing Patton's advance barely moved. Reports mentioned stalled armor, rising casualties, and fierce resistance. To them, it looked like Patton was stuck. And in Allied command politics, being stuck was dangerous. Because in the north, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery was preparing something massive, his carefully planned crossing of the Rhine. As always, Montgomery demanded priority, fuel, ammunition, air support. If Patton failed, his supplies would disappear. Patton knew this. He wasn't just racing against the Germans. He was racing against his own allies. 2 divisions against doctrine. Military doctrine was clear. To capture a heavily defended city, especially one surrounded by hills and rivers, an attacker needed overwhelming force. 3-1 at minimum, ideally 4-1. Trier was no ordinary city. It sat in a natural bowl, protected by high ground. The Moselle River wrapped around it like a moat. Bridges were rigged with explosives. Anti-tank guns were hidden among Roman ruins. Intelligence reports warned of thousands of German troops inside the city. Veteran units. Determined orders. Hold Trier to the last man. Supreme Headquarters ran the numbers. The conclusion was obvious. Trier would take 4 divisions. Patton had 2, the 10th Armored Division, and the 94th Infantry Division. On paper, it was madness. Patton feels the clock. Patton didn't sit behind a desk. He drove forward. He stood in the mud alongside his tank commanders, boots soaked, voice raw from shouting. "Keep moving," he screamed. "If you stop, you die." His presence electrified the men. And then, suddenly, the impossible happened. Patton feels the clock. Patton didn't sit behind a desk. He drove forward. He stood in the mud alongside his tank commanders, boots soaked, voice raw from shouting. "Keep moving," he screamed. "If you stop, you die." His presence electrified the men. And then, suddenly, the impossible happened. On February 24th, the main belt of the Siegfried line cracked. The Tiger Division burst through. German resistance collapsed almost overnight. Rear guards fled. Command and control evaporated. Once the line broke, Patton didn't slow down. He accelerated. The American tanks poured into open terrain, racing east toward the Saar River, toward Trier. By late February, they were closing in. But Trier wasn't surrendering. The fortress city. German engineers flooded the approaches to the city. Bridges were wired with tons of explosives. Artillery was positioned in the surrounding hills. The city itself became a trap. From Paris, the reports grew darker. Urban combat, house-to-house fighting. A meat grinder. Eisenhower's operations officers were alarmed. "This is a mistake," they warned. "Patton will get bogged down. He'll lose men for no reason." They drafted an order. Bypass Trier. Do not engage. Wait for reinforcements, Eisenhower agreed. It was cautious, it was sensible. It followed the rule book. The order was sent, but war moves faster than paper. In 1945, orders didn't travel instantly. Messages had to be encoded, typed, relayed through command chains. Delivered by motorcycle couriers over broken roads. Hours passed. Meanwhile, Patton sensed something. He could feel hesitation from above. He knew a stop order was coming, and Patton hated being stopped. So he made a decision that would define the battle. He called General Walton Walker. "Take Trier," Patton said, "and take it tonight. No delay. No waiting, no reinforcements." March 1st, after dark. Patton wasn't asking permission. He was creating a fact too big to argue with. Underscore. One chance, the bridges. That night, the 10th Armored Division took positions on the hills overlooking Trier. Below them lay the ancient city, silent, blacked out, unaware of what was coming. The Moselle River cut through the valley like a blade. There were only 2 bridges, one modern bridge, the Kaiser Bridge, and one ancient marvel, the Roman Bridge, built in 16 BC, nearly 2,000 years old. It had survived empires, invasions, and revolutions. Now it stood wired with explosives. A German officer waited with the detonator. If the bridges were destroyed, the tanks would be trapped. The infantry would be slaughtered in the water. Patton's gamble would fail. The plan was terrifyingly simple. Speed, surprise, darkness. Rush the city. Shock the defenders. Seize the bridges before they could be blown. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Richardson was chosen to lead the charge. At 0200 hours, engines roared to life. No artillery. No warning, just motion. The attack had begun. At 0200 hours, the silence shattered. American tank engines roared to life on the hills above Trier. The sound rolled down into the valley like thunder. There would be no artillery barrage, no warning shots. Surprise was their only weapon. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Richardson raised his hand, and the column moved. Sherman tanks surged forward, headlights dark, tracks grinding over frozen roads. They smashed through the first German roadblocks on the outskirts of the city. Wooden barricades splintered, barbed wire snapped. German sentries fired flares. The night exploded into light. White and green flares floated over Trier, exposing the tanks as they raced downhill. Machine guns opened up from windows and rooftops. Tracers sliced through the darkness. Panzerfaust rockets screamed past, slamming into walls and streets. The lead American tank took a direct hit. It burst into flames. For a split second, the column hesitated. Then Richardson shouted over the radio. The burning tank was shoved aside like scrap metal. The attack did not stop. Speed was everything. The first bridge falls. The tanks roared toward the Kaiser bridge, the modern crossing over the Moselle. If they could seize it intact, the city would fall quickly. The lead tank reached the bridge entrance. Then boom. The night was ripped apart by a massive explosion. Fire shot into the sky. Stone and steel collapsed into the river below. The Kaiser bridge was gone. The Germans had blown it just in time. Smoke drifted across the water. Now there was only one option left, the Romang Bridge. A 2,000-year-old lifeline. Richardson didn't hesitate. Romang Bridge, he ordered. Full speed, the tanks turned into the heart of the city. Tria's medieval streets were narrow, twisting, and confusing. Maps were useless in the dark. Buildings loomed on both sides. Every corner could hide an anti-tank gun. German defenders fired from balconies and alleyways. Panzerfaust streaked past the tanks, missing by inches. The Americans followed the river, then they turned a corner. And there it was, the Romang Bridge. Ancient stone arches stood silently over the Moselle intact, but the approach was deadly. Machine gun nests covered the bridgehead. Searchlights snapped on. Explosives were already primed. Somewhere nearby, a German officer stood with his hand on the detonator. This was the moment. If the bridge blew, Patton's gamble would collapse. 2 divisions would be stranded. The attack would fail. Eisenhower's caution would be proven right. The run across history, Richardson made a split-second decision. He ordered the tanks to suppress the machine gun nests. Then he sent in the infantry. A platoon of soldiers leapt off the backs of the tanks and sprinted toward the bridge. Bullets sparked off the ancient stones. Men stumbled. Some fell and didn't get back up. Still, they ran. Every step felt like a countdown to death. Halfway across the bridge, the soldiers braced themselves. Any second now. They expected the explosion. It didn't come. Seconds stretched into eternity. No blast. No fire. The German officer hesitated, or something went wrong. A wire may have been cut. A bullet may have struck the detonator line. Or perhaps the speed of the American attack shocked the defenders into paralysis. No one would ever know. What mattered was this: the bridge was still standing. The Americans reached the far side. They stormed the bridge house. Bayonets flashed. Gunfire echoed under the stone arches. They found the demolition wires. And they cut them. A green flare shot into the sky. The city breaks. The signal was unmistakable. The Romang Bridge was secure. Moments later, the heavy Sherman tanks of the 10th Armored Division rumbled onto the ancient stones. Tracks clanged against rock laid nearly 2 millennia earlier. For the German defenders, the sound was terrifying. The roar of engines echoed through the valley. Steel monsters crossed a bridge that was supposed to stop them. Once the tanks were inside Trier, resistance collapsed. German units surrendered in groups. White flags appeared from windows. Entire formations laid down their weapons. By dawn on March 2, 1945, the city was American. The stars and stripes were raised over the Porta Nigra, the ancient Roman gate. Patton had done it, a fortress city, 2 divisions, minimal casualties. The impossible had become fact. Do you want me to give it back? As dawn broke over Trier on March 2, 1945, smoke still drifted through the streets. Entire formations laid down their weapons. By dawn on March 2, 1945, the city was American. The stars and stripes were raised over the Porta Nigra, the ancient Roman gate. Patton had done it, a fortress city, 2 divisions, minimal casualties. The impossible had become fact. Do you want me to give it back? As dawn broke over Trier on March 2, 1945, smoke still drifted through the streets. German soldiers filed out in silence. American troops secured intersections. The ancient city, which High Command said would require 4 divisions, had fallen overnight. Inside his forward headquarters, General George S. Patton was in a rare mood. He was relaxed. A cigar burned between his fingers. Reports kept coming in, bridge secured, prisoners counted, defenses collapsed. Then an aide entered the room. The man looked uneasy. "General," he said, "a message from Supreme Headquarters." From General Eisenhower. Patton took the paper. He read it once, then again. It was the order drafted the day before. Bypass Trier. Do not engage. It will take 4 divisions to capture the city. For a moment, Patton said nothing. Then he started to chuckle. The chuckle became laughter, loud, booming, unmistakably Patton. The irony was perfect. The army had moved faster than bureaucracy. The victory had been won before permission could arrive. Patton looked up at his staff. "They think we can't do it," he said. "They think we need 4 divisions." Patton sat at his desk. He could have replied with a standard message. Objective secured. Mission complete. That would have been proper, but Patton wasn't interested in being proper. He was still irritated by the lack of trust, by the constant caution, by the way Montgomery was always favored with supplies and praise. So he picked up a pencil. And he wrote history. Have taken Trier with 2 divisions. Do you want me to give it back? He handed the paper to the radio operator. Send it, Patton said. Send it straight to Ike? When the message reached Versailles, it caused an immediate stir. Staff officers froze. Some laughed nervously. Others didn't know what to say. Then the telegram reached Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a serious man. He carried the weight of an entire war on his shoulders. He read the message carefully. When the message reached Versailles, it caused an immediate stir. Staff officers froze. Some laughed nervously. Others didn't know what to say. Then the telegram reached Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a serious man. He carried the weight of an entire war on his shoulders. He read the message carefully. Then, despite himself, he smiled. It was pure Patton. Arrogant, sharp, insufferable, and absolutely brilliant. Eisenhower knew one thing for certain. You don't punish a general for winning a major victory. Ahead of schedule, under strength, and with minimal casualties. The capture of Trier secured a Moselle crossing. It opened the gateway to the Rhine. It accelerated the collapse of German resistance. According to several accounts, Eisenhower folded the telegram and slipped it into his pocket. He didn't reply to the sarcasm. Instead, he issued a new order. Congratulations. Keep moving. Within days, the story spread through the Third Army. It was whispered in mess halls, shared in foxholes, repeated with pride. Did you hear what the old man told Ike? The telegram became a symbol. It made the soldiers feel like they belonged to something different, an army that moved faster, hit harder, and refused to wait for permission. An army that did the impossible. Why Trier mattered. The capture of Trier is often overshadowed by larger battles, the Battle of the Bulge, the crossing of the Rhine. But in many ways, Trier was the perfect example of Patton's genius. He understood something others didn't. In war, time is the most valuable currency. If Patton had waited for 4 divisions, the Germans would have reinforced. Trier could have become another Stalingrad, a bloody stalemate. Instead, by attacking now with less, he achieved more. Speed replaced caution. Instinct replaced doctrine, and it worked. That single line, "Do you want me to give it back?" became one of the most famous sentences in military history. It was a reminder to planners and politicians alike, while they debated what was possible. The warriors were already doing it. On that night, Patton didn't just capture a city. He captured the essence of victory. Default text.